All right, welcome back. It's the literature in English once more. I hope you're ready for this jolly ride. I want to assure you that with this course, you are sure of your distinction at least 90% of the entire mark. I am so excited to tell you that I am super certain about this. I am so certain. So today we want to focus our attention on the genres of literature. When we talk about the genres of literature, we'll look at the classification or the categories into which literature is divided. So basically, literature is divided into three parts: the prose, the drama, and the poetry. Somebody's doing gang 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 gang. You're not wrong, because your journey starts now. But not don't be surprised, don't be afraid, not to be afraid. Come on. It's very simple. We're going to go through this together. I'm going to lead you by the hand, and we shall get to the promised land safely. We shall get there hale and hearty. None will be missing. It's the genres of literature. So let's go. The prose. You see, one beautiful thing about prose is, let me draw something. This is, don't mind my drawing. This is a book. This is a book or a novel. Let's take, for instance, this is Half of a Yellow Sun. Half of a Yellow Sun. You saw the movie, right? Now, this was what happened in the movie. The movie went this way. What happened to this part? This part. And this part. When you read a novel or you read a prose narrative and you see the movie can never be as complete as the book. When you saw Animal Farm and you read Animal Farm, some little details that were missing. When you saw Half of a Yellow Sun and you read Half of a Yellow Sun by Chimamanda Adichie, the little contents in the book were missing in the movie. So which of them would you rather do? Would you rather read the book or see the movie? Reading the book is best. So prose, it is derived from the Latin word prosus, which means a straightforward discourse. A straightforward discourse. Some of you have met your friends and you're, hey, you didn't show up at the party. So what happened? My friend, let me tell you something. The ladies will then should be like this. Tell me something, let me hear. You see at that party, do you remember one Cynthia girl? Cynthia, yeah. So that one with, exactly, yes. Tell me, what did she do this time? You know that girl, so in fact, the last time she did this, she did that. My friend, you know her very well. This time around, you know what she did? You will not believe it. My friend, tell you, just all you want to do is to tell a story, but you have to go beating about the bush. But for the prose, no, you go straight to the point. It's a straightforward discourse. It has no time. Everything is told directly through. Okay? So it is a piece of writing characterized by continuous writing, grammatical structures, and speech-like flow. And speech-like flow and a speech-like flow. When you read a novel, you discover the fact that the author tries to bring everything that actually happened into the book. And how he does that is that he maintains his obedience or his loyalty to the rules of English grammar. If he's writing in the English language, or if he's writing in French language, he obeys the French rules of grammar. If he's writing in English, he obeys the English rules of grammar. And he tries to write it as if he's telling you the story. Like the narrator is just by your side. In fact, as you hold the book, the narrator is sitting close to you and telling you how everything happened from page 1 to page 2, from page 2 to page 3. It is a continuous flow, a continuous write-up. In fact, some people even call it an embellished write-up. People call it an embellished write-up. And it makes it so interesting that you could follow, and that's why it's in a speech-like manner, so that you feel like you relate quickly with it. He's not writing a debate to you, or he's not writing it like something out far away from you. He's writing like he's talking with you. It basically tells stories. Storytelling is the major concern of prose works. All prose works are basically telling stories. It can be fiction or non-fiction. It can be real, it can be unreal, or it can be real. Okay, it uses natural or conversational language for artistic purposes. It uses the natural or conversational language for artistic purposes. Basically, if the prose is not, if the novel is not written in a language that you would comprehend, you will drop it. How many of you have ever picked up a book and you ended up reading page 1 like 7 times before you're able to move over? Or you finally dropped it? The first time I read 1984 by George Orwell, I think I read that book. I read the first 13 pages about 6 times. And I just had to continue because each time I pick up the book, I become confused where I stopped. But in the end, I finished it because I needed to read. I needed to write. I think I needed to sit for an exam, and that book was very important for me at that time. So it was compulsory that I read that book. Okay, so that book for me was not written in a language I think I feel was close or was conversational for me at that time. When I picked it up again, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it completely. So, how do we mean when we say that it uses the natural or conversational language for artistic purposes? Basically, if you cannot relate with the book, then probably it is not the time for you to read the book, or maybe you're not in the right frame of mind to read the book. Why do you pick up a motivational book and you enjoy it when growing up, and at some point in your life you stopped reading such books? What actually has happened, or what actually happened? Is it that the book stopped talking to you, or you outgrew the level or the level of the book? Let me say so. So which of them? So when a book stops talking to you, then you understand that either there's something wrong with you, either the fault is yours, or the book is irrelevant to you at that time. So basically, it is written in chapters and paragraphs. So the first one we said was that it is from the Latin word "prosus," which means a straightforward discourse. It is written in a speech-like flow manner. It basically tells stories. It can be fiction or non-fiction. It is it uses natural language, and it is written in chapters and paragraphs. Now, we said prose could be fiction or non-fiction. So basically, let's look at the categories of prose then. So the first one is the non-fiction. Non-fiction simply means that these stories are created out of facts, out of real occurrences. How many of you have seen the mother of? I used to know one movie. There was this movie that actually, uh, I think, the lawsuit of the century. I've forgotten the mother of. I've forgotten. I can't remember the full name. You discover that it talks about how somebody was killed, was murdered, how a man was accused to have murdered his wife. Okay, but that was basically from a real incident. You see, almost all the settings, almost all the places used in the movie are real places, as they exist even till today. The movie Titanic that you see or that you've seen is actually real. Or is it fictive? Or is it real? Can't remember too clearly now. Okay, so but non-fiction basically uses real events, real stories, or they create movies, or they create stories out of real activities, real and factual events. Okay, now this involves real characters, places, and even events. I told you the characters now may be in stories. In stories, the characters will be real. Their names will be used, probably maybe changed to something else, but that character, the role that was played will be there. Most non-fiction works are written to inform the public. That is one thing we ought to still know, that they are written to inform the. It is basically to pass information. It is basically to inform us, to let us know about something very spectacular that has happened in history. Some of us have seen this movie, Kunta Kinte. Kunta Kinte is a very old movie about an African legend who fought for his people. And in that movie, we saw a very young man. That young man represented the young man of that time that fought for his people. Okay? So, all that actually happened were backdated. All that actually took place, the way it happened, were imagined. The places it happened were actually used. That is the beauty of non-fiction works. They are basically real. You see, the character exhibits everything that was said about him, or that has been written down, or that was known. Okay? So, most fiction works, most non-fiction work includes biography, autobiography, memoir, letters, essays, journals, and criticisms. So let's look quickly at the other ones, the categories of non-fiction. The biographies, the autobiographies, the memoirs, the letters, the essays, the journals, and criticism. Let's take them one after the other. The biographies. A biography is the basic is the story of a person's life written by another person. That is the simple meaning of a biography. And when we talk about biographies, it's just like one writing the story of his father's life. Usually, it is written to praise the person, It uses available evidences like written, oral, and pictorial materials. I'm trying to envision the story of a man that has how many of you have seen The Men That Made America? I think I'm not very sure of the title of that film, but I think that is we saw some of these American leaders, some of the, and some stories that were told about them. Some of them who were very good businessmen, some of them who were very great inventors, who were inventing things and making life, trying to make life easy, and also creating business out of all of it. You see each of them doing what they know how to do best. Okay, some of the pictures there may be real, but some of the actions there may not be real. They may not be real. But the fact is that there was a pictorial and there was oral and written evidences. It is written to eulogize a real person who lives at the time or is still living. Who lived at the time or is still living. Okay? Some persons have actually written about other persons even while they are alive. Like some persons in government uh, had their books, had the stories of their lives written even while they are alive. Okay, it could be because it was written to eulogize, to praise that person, to make that, to proclaim that person as a great man, as a great woman. I'm very, very certain that Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala would soon have a book written about her, maybe by somebody else. I don't know, but I have that strong feeling because she is a great woman of our time, and somebody will be putting all the pictorial evidences and everything together to give her that worthy eulogy she deserves. The story is told in tone and style that is convincing. This story is actually written to make you believe that this person is a great person. So many people have written about men like Odumegwu Ojukwu, Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. In fact, when I was growing up, I used to believe this man was, in fact, everything I believed about him was actually real. It was invincible. He was seen as number one in the Igbo land. Is they call him the Ezigburuburu, the Igbo. He has lived a life that the entire Igbo race has come to see him as Lord. They've come to see him as what we call the Odogu of the Igbo people, of the Igbo race. Okay, so I used to see this man, and I'm sure many young persons like me would also, when they were small, growing up, would also see this man in the light of the fact that he would just come in and kill his enemies. His enemies will come in to attack him, and he will become invisible. Like they can't even see him. He will become invisible and at the same time remain invincible. Until when I grew up to understand that he was actually a man like me. He was actually mortal, but he has superhuman abilities. Okay, so the writer may be a character in the story. When okay, we have examples like Niyo Shundare's literary biography by Sule Egya. If Sule Egya might be one of the characters in the story of Niyo Shundare, because for him to have written this book, it means he must have known Niyo Shundare closely. Okay, Ben Anaguonye, who wrote this book, the Ikemba, remembering Chukwuemeka Ojukwu Odumegwu. When he wrote this book, I'm sure he must have known Chukwuemeka Ojukwu closely. Lukman Olaonikpekun, who wrote the Fashola Years, This was about Governor Raju Fashola of Lagos State. Throughout during this period of in government, basically this man Lukman must have been a part of the government. Okay, so let's look at autobiographies. If biographies are stories of a person's life written by another person, autobiography will basically be the story of a person's life written by himself. According to Herbert Samuel, he said, an autobiography is the story of how a man thinks he lived. Did I live my life right? Yes. Okay, this was how I lived my life. You write it down. Did I live my life wrongly? Yes. This is how I live my life. You write it down. So he says, if my life is a good life to you, copy it. If my life is a bad life to you, learn from it. So basically, according to Herbert Samuel, he says that an autobiography is the story of a person, is the story of how a man thinks he lives. He lived. He's still the man might still be alive, or yes, the man might still be alive, but that's how he thinks he lived, or he's still living. Okay? The narrator in this sense is the main character and subject in the story. Everything about the story, everything that actually happened in the story is about the narrator. You see the continuous use of I and we while I was, and I decided to, you see the use of I continuously, we continuously, us. Okay? And it is usually written in the first person point of view. Like I said, you see the use of I, we, us, our, and the rest of them. Example is The Man Died by Wole Soyinka. You need to read this book. You really need to read this book. It is the story of Wole Soyinka's life in the prison during the Nigerian Biafran Civil War. You need to read this book. It is a very interesting and boring book. You just have to read this book. The Story of My Life by Ellen Keller, where she talks about college life, her life as a young girl in the secondary school, what they had to do, and just a lifestyle, right? She was the life of a life and the life of others. The story of a life as it includes others during our college days. The Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela, where he wrote about the troubles he faced just to redeem his dear nation, South Africa. How about I write a book about my life and I tell you, what will I tell you about? I'll think about it. I think I need to write an autobiography about myself. Okay. Uh, so I think Obasanjo wrote one too. My command. There's other man also, Ademoyega Adewale, something like that. Yes, he wrote Why We Struck. Yes, Why We Struck. Why We Struck. That was about the activity, a real activity of himself and others. Okay. Now, that's about the autobiography, the story of a person's life written by that person, how the person thinks he lived. If I write a story about myself, then I've actually written an autobiography. The memoirs. From the Latin word memoir, which means memory or reminisce, okay, it has to do with remembrance. When you sit back and you ponder and you smile or you cry or you laugh, when you remember some things, you just laugh. So that this aspect has to do with real life events, but it attached to memory. Okay, it's a narrative written from the perspective of the author and centered on an important aspect of his life. Okay, the memoir is actually just like Why We Struck. We could actually say Why We Struck by Ademola Ademoyega, um, Adewale Ademoyega. We could actually call that a memoir because it was basically about the aspect of his life, the Nigerian Civil War, how the army, how the soldiers started to put up their idea together, how they sold it to themselves, and had some of them agreeing to everything. How Unzogu, Ifiajuna, and himself, Ademoyega, came together, agreed, planned the coup and everything, and how it was jeopardized in the end, and which led to the death of some of them. Okay, so basically, it has to do with an important aspect of the life of the author. It includes facts, but the author tends to be more flexible, and so it was basically written from the author's perspective. He writes what he feels. He writes it. He's so flexible. He decides how it is. He can even turn a real event in the opposite direction because he believes that he is the only one telling the story at that point in time. He is the Lord and Master at that time. Okay. Don't forget, he uses the first person point of view, as well as it shows the relationship between the writer and other persons, and the places and animals too. So at this point, the writer is the person telling a story. The memoir could be said to be an autobiography, but the autobiography is about a person's life from childhood to adulthood. But the memoir is about a particular time of a person's life. Probably the person was in prison. Probably the person was involved in one thing or another, and he decided to write only about that part of that period of his life, that part of his life. That is what a memoir could actually be said to be. So, and it also shows the relationship between the writer at that point and the place. It shows the relationship between the writer and other persons. Other persons who may not have existed at the beginning, but they were found in the middle. It gives us the complete relationship between the writer and those persons at that time. Mind you, the setting, the actions, and dialogue are actually made natural, completely natural, completely natural, the way they happen. For example, Apart from Just My Command is the story of Apart from Just life while he was the head of Nigeria at a point in his life. Also, Philip Effiong, who was Ojukwu subordinate, uh, his own story about the Biafra um, and Nigerian Civil War. A Movable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. Homage to Catalonia by George Orwell. These are examples of memoirs. And I can also give you an example, Why We Struck by Adewale Ademoyega. I hope I get the name of the author correctly. But this book is a must read if you really want to have an idea of what the Nigerian Biafran Civil War was like. Try and get the book. It's a read activity for us in literature, and it's been cool and cozy all the way. So at this point, we come to the end of this section. See you in the next section. Bye bye.